Hi, everyone. Thank you for joining today for the Women and Diversity in the AEC Industry Magnitude 10, presented by Miyamoto International. It looks like we have a lot of Miyamoto staff members online with us, but I think we have a few external people as well. So just to give a quick background about Miyamoto, Miyamoto International is a global multi-hazard engineering and disaster risk management firm that builds resilience to sustain economies, safeguard communities, and save lives around the world. We work from over 25 offices throughout the world, and I know we have some people calling in from different offices and projects around the globe, so welcome. Here at Miyamoto, we are committed to looking for ways to increase diversity of people and perspectives in our work, because of a belief that it is important not only to our internal staff culture, but also that the fields of architecture, engineering, and construction greatly benefit and improve from diverse perspectives, opinions, influences, and life experiences. Here to talk with us today about opportunities in this regard is Miyamoto board member Jamie Clare. Jamie Clare Kiser is Zweig Group's Director of Advisory Services. Prior to joining Zweig Group, Jamie practiced law and also worked in commercial banking. She holds a Master's of Business Administration, a Juris Doctor, and a Bachelor of Arts in History. She is a managing principal at Zweig Group and serves on the firm's board of directors. Additionally, she is an outside board member to Miyamoto International and is on the board of the Buffalo River Foundation, a 501c3 nonprofit dedicated to conserving the Buffalo National River. Recently, she founded the platform Elevate Her as a part of Zweig Group's mission to elevate the industry, and she's here with us today. Thank you, Jamie, to talk about Elevate Her more.
All right, well, let's just get started. Thank y'all for having me, and thank you for letting me come and talk about Elevate Her. The important disclaimer that I usually give right when I start talk about Elevate Her is to unfortunately inform you that you have a speaker who is not an expert on diversity, equity, and inclusion. That really was never what attracted me to the concept behind Elevate Her. To me, as an advisor to this space and seeing the challenges that firms within this space have with recruiting and retention, and also just seeing some of the disparities in the data between how different people are experiencing the workplace within AEC, it kind of unlocked the part of me that is more associated with being a business owner, with thinking about a challenge and figuring out kind of an entrepreneurial way to solve a problem that will benefit, all of the stakeholders involved. That's really kind of where my passion for this topic came from, and bringing people together to solve this recruiting and retention challenge that we're facing. So this is really what started Elevate Her for our firm. It's our commitment to embrace and promote and ensure that there are equal opportunities for everyone within our industry, and not just to recruit and retain, but also to engage and inspire and to connect and to get the best out of the brilliant people within this space. So the program started in 2018 with an open letter from me after a series of unfortunate events unfolded, and I just found myself feeling really isolated as somebody who's often in boardrooms and in executive kind of meetings, and kind of feeling a little bit lonely without a lot of folks that look like me or have similar life experiences to me, or people that I would just generally relate to. And kind of tying this together again with the challenge of the recruiting and retention piece, I came back from a meeting and I asked my colleague, Christy Zweig, if we could look at any of our data differently than we have before. And, if I'm just having an emotional day, which happens, or if there's something to the statistics. And within, a few minutes, she quickly sorted our principals, partners, and owners survey back in 2018 based on the gender of the respondents, so people that own businesses within AEC. And we found a call to action here within the data that 100% of women principals had considered leaving AEC, compared to just 47% of males. So these are people that own companies. And then to me, as somebody who works primarily in mergers and acquisitions and is focused on driving long-term value, to read that 0% of the women principals were gifted any portion of their ownership for free, compared to a third of males, that really hit home that there's maybe a gap in how we see our workforces and different contributions of our colleagues. that kind of gave me the assurance that we were onto something. So in 2019, we started the Elevate Her cohort. It's a think tank style program. People from all across the country, any part of the org chart, any facet of AEC are able to apply to be part of a year-long program and kind of network to solve a challenge and to really identify a succinct topic within recruiting and retention that will lead to action. That's really important to me for this program, that it's not just identifying problems, but also providing solutions. So throughout this presentation, I'll pass along a lot of the data from our research, a lot of things that are, to me, opportunities. They're also clearly areas for improvement, but I promise I will not share a data point without a specific topic that one of our Elevate Her cohort teams actually decided to address. So it's a very solution-oriented, action kind of driven program. And now we're in the third year of the cohort program, and we're at about 100 people from across the country, again, an org chart and just every different place within AEC come together to kind of contribute to the thought leadership within our space. I apologize, I caught the virus this last week, so I'm sorry if I sound a little bit rough. And what we have here is just an excerpt from why somebody applied to be part of the program. The results from this last year's cohort team will be presented live in Las Vegas at our Elevate Her Symposium right before our Elevate AEC conference on September 14th. I'm so excited. So I said we're in the third year of this program. We've never once gotten to have this in-person final presentation that we dreamed of from the start. So I'm really excited about it. The data that we have here comes from Zwei Group's research process. We're a management consulting, advisory, research, and awards program that exclusively focuses on AEC. So we collect over 2.4 million data points per year on just firms within our industry. Everything from fee and billing scheduling to operating expense benchmarking to sentiment data across the org chart through our Best Firm to Work For program. So we have all kinds of different perspectives and vantage points. And that's where a lot of the research that I'll be sharing here today comes from. So the top challenge cited by firms this year is recruiting. Interestingly, 71% of firms haven't gotten quite so far as to develop a recruiting budget. So I'll leave that there because this isn't that talk, this is different talk. But I would suggest if you have a business problem that you would rank number one, you should maybe consider budgeting resources towards it. I digress. In our 2022 recruiting and retention report, so our most recent data, we looked at who is what the hiring needs really are. So understanding that the top need is the recruitment and retention piece. 88% of firms responded that they have a need to hire. That's huge. The hiring needs are the most prevalent at those medium to large firms, the 250 to about 500 employee size firms. And on average, firms report a need to increase their hiring by about 8.6% of their current staff levels. So they have about 8 total open positions for a 100-person firm. That's a pretty significant talent gap. And again, part of what drew me to the Elevate Her concept was, is there a way to bridge this gap by better engaging everyone, who's gone through the education process, who brings something to AEC and who's interested in contributing? If so, when you read data like this, it really reinforces why it's worth pursuing. So further, we asked what your firm's greatest staffing need is. You may or may not be shocked to learn that the greatest staffing need is at that moderate experience to mid-experience professional level. So anywhere from that 31% represents moderately experienced, and then 56% experienced professionals. So 87% of the total staffing need is at that 3 to 10 year experience level within our industry. I don't know if anybody feels that, within their own organization, but that's really consistent across the data. And then we also look at what the average firm breakdown is in terms of what percent of their workforce is represented by these different demographics. So about 29% of the average firm is within that 3 to 10 year tranche, yet it represents 87% of the total hiring need, excuse me. Apologies. So when you think about what's happening within that 3 to 10 year tranche, to me, again, that's one of these other opportunity areas. What are people within that age group experiencing? Where are they within their personal and professional journeys? And if your firm is one of those that this is their greatest hiring need, how do we make sure that we are laser focused on messaging that really appeals to the needs that people within that group are facing? So we took a look at leave policies and we found that there's probably a significant area for improvement here. And it's even more interesting when you overlay that with satisfaction with parental leave policies broken down by demographic. There is a real opportunity to improve and perhaps retain or attract people within this most kind of desired level if we rethink the policies that we have in place and the ways that we're able to take care of those individuals. And I want to be really, really clear that I'm sharing this as an example of ways that we can tailor our messaging to appeal to the group that we feel like there's a major need to hire. This is not specific to elevating her. In my opinion, elevating her requires moving to a culture of parenting. And our industry has not maybe done a great job of that, according to the data, where there's still a strong feeling that mothers specifically feel that having children has possibly held them back in their career. This is an important piece of the equity puzzle of moving from a culture where one parent is doing the parenting to a culture where parenting overall is embraced. I think that everyone within our industry would benefit from this, not one gender or another. One possible solution that came up in last year's Elevate Her cohort is the concept of returnships. This team investigated the potential to attract back those folks who maybe left our industry to spend a few years focusing on raising families or parents, taking care of things outside of maybe work, but took themselves out of the AEC kind of industry for a period of time. And it's a very difficult one to come back to. The rate of change and the technology changes, and just feeling comfortable, right, with like the day-to-day within our space can be daunting to someone, even after taking just a few months off. They worked on emulating a returnship program after things that have been successfully rolled out in many other industries. If Big Law can do it, you can't tell me that AEC can't. There are a lot of finance has done this. There are a lot of different industries that have made on-ramps to make it accessible for folks to return to the workforce. And again, when we're talking about everything we possibly can do to get through this record backlog and attract people back, to me, this is a great opportunity to consider. And what a differentiator it could be too. Now here's where the data gets a little bit depressing. When you look at the attrition rate, there's a real challenge with that leaking pipeline when we get to that mid-tier experience level. And it's especially, it continues up through the org chart, the ratio of males to females within our space. Women opt out of our industry at pretty alarming rates when you compare them to the fact that there's like a 1.1 ratio coming out of school to about a 6 to 1 ratio at about the senior executive level within our industry. We have not done a great job of retaining all of the people that we attract. And again, to me, huge opportunity. We also, I think, maybe exacerbate the challenge by the ratio of technical to non-technical when you look at it by gender. And when you look at the share of kind of housework or, getting the coffee, taking care of things that are not technical in nature and being seen as an equal to peers. And the non-technical to technical ratio is challenging to that. One of the groups within our cohort in 2020 came up with the coolest idea. And by the way, all of these are available on SWAG Group's Elevate Her website. It's zgelevateher.com. Everything is free, it's downloadable, it's action ready. This is all to benefit the industry that we serve. They came up with some of the coolest ideas to attract kids from elementary school up through high school to AEC. They have posters, they have bingo cards, they have those fortune tellers to show different careers and to show different people what it looks like to have a career in our space. Not only that, they also wrote a cover letter. So all you have to do is print it out and you can send it right to your school if you'd like them to take any of this and bring it into the classroom. Their thesis is the more that we show people that anyone with any background is essential to building the world, the more folks will have in the pipeline who are attracted to this space. Now, the challenges with the hiring needs that we have, as well as the retention challenges and the turnover too, We have record backlog again. For the second consecutive year, we have the highest backlog on record. Our company has been surveying our industry for over 30 years. So 3 decades of data back to back, we have 2 record years of backlog. This is an especially motivational statistic if you're looking at also the hiring needs and the lack of folks that we have to choose from. It is a real challenge to respond to the massive demands that we have in our space and to do it in a way that is sustainable. It's also interesting to think about the opportunity to have project managers that have different perspectives and experience levels. I do think that this data is just a little bit funny, but we asked what the biggest fear for project managers was, and females responded supervising staff, and males responded getting away from the design and technical work and difficulties meeting budget and time goals. 0% of female project managers even listed that as one of their concerns. They've got the budget. They're going to be fine on time. And then the biggest challenges of project managers too by gender are also interesting. Managing client expectations, managing time. Those are things that are all acutely felt when you get to that leadership level. The reason I share this isn't because there's like a right or wrong answer. It's because the more different perspectives that we have managing projects and teams and approaching client challenges, I feel like the richer the results will be. You know, the different kinds of conversations and different ways that we kind of talk about what we see out there as ways to be a good project manager, as ways to serve the client, as different things we can bring to the projects that we're working on. I think it is only to our benefit to have different types of people with different experiences and perspectives in the room as we endeavor to do so. So I think it is important that people see a future within our space that doesn't look kind of one size fits all. And by the way, a homework assignment, if you would like to see, I don't know about it depressing, but maybe funny set of pictures, Google image search civil engineer. I swear there's like 2 stock image models and I'll give you a hint what they look like, but it's pretty funny. One solution that a group came up with to making sure that we are engaging people and not losing them at that level where they're incredibly busy, going from somebody who's a great technical professional to that project manager level, where there's a lot more kind of the weight of the world and also a totally new career shift to managing people and teams and leadership. It's tough, and burnout is a real challenge that we're seeing, and we're hearing it more and more often. And it's not just at the PM level, it's something that's expressed at our CEO roundtables. It's something that is expressed, I mean, really at every part of the org chart. Being incredibly busy and being stretched thin for talent, it's a recipe for burnout, and it's tough. One of the groups came up with this pack of cards. They're an actual deck of cards with different conversation topics. And it's a great way to engage your team or to have different types of conversations, maybe than you would have otherwise. And it's designed to identify kind of things that bring people together and to help identify any of the burnout kind of or cultural challenges before they become problems. Again, it's a tool in the toolbox to try to retain the folks that we work with and have different types of conversations. Now, I probably don't need to tell people that opt into a talk like this about the benefits of diversity on project teams, but I recently read this white paper from FIU that I thought was interesting, and I really like the way it articulated the case behind it. But just engineering is specifically connected to diversity through design, has a major impact on power, privilege, and justice. As engineering is pursued by individuals, their design is impacted by their individuality and thus their diversity. Studies of engineering organizations have illustrated how some engineers assume that they understand the experiences of everyone based only on their own experience. And the tendency to discount or not have awareness of the experiences of broader or more diverse user groups is compounded by the lack of diversity within engineering organizations. Teams and organizations, especially those without diverse compositions, become hubs for user perspectives that are limited in their understanding of the broader population. Homogeneous engineering teams can also foster negative attitudes towards individuals from other disciplines who bring different perspectives and ideas. I mean, to me, this just says it all. This is the creativity aspect, the unlocking really just the best of what we can do to solve the challenges facing design professionals across the world. I'm just making sure that we're not only focused on people that have our experience and assuming that the user, the community at large will interact with the design in the way that the designer kind of contemplates. I thought it was just a really succinct way of explaining sort of the power of successful projects when there is a diverse team behind them. One of the very coolest ideas that came out of our cohort a couple of years ago is called Drive. It's inspired by LEAD, and it's a points-based index to measure diversity, equity, and inclusion at the quantitative and qualitative levels. They are hoping that this becomes something that's adopted by owners and stakeholders, and that someday there is a plaque outside of buildings that says this is Drive certified. And they talked about things like interviewing different people within the community, making sure that they have different representation on all of the project teams, looking at sustainability, at financing sources. It was a really cool way to kind of map out the power of diversity and kind of flip the discussion from saying, if industry may be slower to get it, but if the owners aren't, right, like let's go there. Like let's chase the people that see the power in having a diverse project team in building a successful outcome. So I thought that was a really, really cool, potentially game-changing project. Back to the depressing data, I'm sorry. Female principals, women who are partial owners or owners within their firms, are twice as likely as male principals to say that their career has not matched up to their goals. I guess to me, data like this it's evidence of not unlocking like the full engagement and harnessing the full potential of the people that we work with. And what a shame, to work with somebody for so long and to watch them kind of grow in their careers, and to know that women are twice as likely as males to maybe feel like it has not matched up to their expectations. I mean, to me, it is about the opportunity to get these data points more aligned so that we're getting the best out of the people that we work with. And so they're bringing their curiosity and kind of that spark and the energy that makes us all kind of better day to day and more fun, having fun with what we do as well. So I know that these data points are not like glowing positive, but to me, they do represent opportunity. That was my disclaimer. That's what lawyers do, right? So bear with me on this one. Female principals on average make $25,000 less in annual base salary than their male counterparts. Their overall total compensation is 30% less than male principals. Female and male principals are almost identical in terms of their chargeability or utilization. And female principals' hourly billing rate is 17% less than their male counterparts. So what does this data tell us? If you want a really profitable firm, promote a bunch of women to principal. I'm just kidding. Don't underpay people. Sorry, guys. It's weird to laugh to yourself on a Zoom. One of the solutions that one of our teams came up with that you can find again, all these are on the Elevator website, but they put together different resources to start the conversations and start to kind of unpack some of these, like why is this the case, or how do I get started on learning more? They've got lists of podcasts, of books. They've got a speakers bureau where people, say I'm up for talking about this topic, and making sure that we have knowledge and understanding at every possible juncture. So just people who've raised their hands or submitted books or other resources that they found valuable, you can get started changing things with the tools in the toolbox. No need to start Googling. This team has pulled this stuff together for us. So we look at who gets promoted within our industry as well. For every 100 men that are promoted, we see that 86 women are promoted. This is actually, it's industry agnostic. It came from the McKinsey & Company Women in the Workplace survey. This survey is fascinating. They put it out every year. If you don't follow it, you really should. They come out with some really interesting data points and connections across different findings. One of the things that they circled on when they identified that there are fewer women being promoted, and also that they also found last year that senior executive women are facing burnout at a significantly higher clip than male executives, and as a result are identified as more at risk of opting out of the workforce. The danger that they hinged on was that women are statistically more likely than men to go out of their way to mentor and to advocate for people who don't look like them. So it's a pipeline to diversity, diverse representation to people who may not already be represented in leadership, that women they uniquely seek out opportunities to mentor people who maybe don't look like them. So it's kind of a compounded loss. It's not just the women being promoted, it's what happens when there are more women in senior leadership, and what are the behaviors that you can measure as outcomes within a company. So to me, that's a pretty important thing to focus on. Who are we mentoring? And what does it mean to be a leader within any of our organizations? How do we get there? We also found, this is one of our data points, this is AEC specific, that while 3 out of 4 male principals say that their input in firm decision-making reflects their share of ownership in the firm, only about 2 out of 3 principals feel the same way. And again, I know that these are kind of like piling on, but this is important data because if we've got people in leadership, we really want them to feel empowered to make the impact within our organization that the folks that elevated these people to principal are fully aware that they're capable of. So what are we doing? How are we getting in our own way and bringing people that we know have this potential to this level in their career, and then causing them to say things like, twice as likely as men to say that their careers aren't matching up to their potential, or their decision making isn't, equitable with their ownership at a disproportionate rate than male principals. It is, again, we've seen these folks are identified as those great people that we want to lead our organization, but we're failing to kind of fully engage, fully connect, and fully kind of, set free the things that we saw within these people as great to begin with. One solution is mentor match. One of our cohort teams actually put together, it's based on online dating algorithms, but it's designed to match mentors and mentees that are going to be compatible. There, you can go and apply to be either or both a mentor and a mentee at different phases in your career, and talk about the skills that would be helpful for you, and talk to somebody who's not in your organization, someone who's just volunteering their time to connect. And their hope is that not having a person that you see within your organization as a mentor, or not having somebody that you can mentor, isn't something that holds people back, or that people have access to folks who are willing to kind of inspire that next group coming up behind them. And one of the women that was in this group that came up with this concept talked about how important it is to have somebody that looks like you. She was an African-American woman, and she said that having an African-American woman mentor probably saved her career in AEC. She said there were things that people weren't telling her that she felt like somebody who looked like her, that could hold up a mirror for her, was able to give her really incisive feedback. And she talked about what a game changer that was for her career, and how she really heard uniquely, from this person, what she needed to do in order to be the kind of leader that she knew she was capable of being. And I thought that was really powerful. And that's why they became so passionate about finding people to join this call to action. And these aren't restricted to just any demographic. Anybody who wants to be a mentor or be mentored is welcome to apply. So here's another area of really cool opportunity to me. The remote workforce and the trends that we're seeing, as far as what this opens up as a whole wide world of places to work and ways to interact with our workforce. I mean, it's amazing the rate of change that we've adopted as an industry, and what that's allowed us to think about doing differently. So according to our data, we have a pulse survey of people that are kind of getting, right now people are in an awkward middle in a lot of places. They're being required to come back to the office, or trying to decide, right? Am I going to remain remote? Am I going to come back in? What's this going to mean, for me? And we asked some questions about that. 29% of the women that responded to the survey about the future of the AEC industry workforce, 29% of women said they would consider a job at a different firm in order to remain remote, versus 9% of men. I'm not going to go all the way back to those slides at the beginning, but we talked about that huge hiring need that we have. We're not bringing enough people into our industry to replace them one at a time. Look at the difference that could be made if this is something that's a huge challenge for your firm. By thinking about where people need to work differently, all of a sudden you've unlocked a whole new pool of people that are actively seeking out opportunities to remain remote. 3 times as many female respondents to the survey said they would even consider a pay cut to remain remote. I wouldn't recommend that again, just like the profitable female principals. But people really care about this, and the demands of the workforce have really changed. And one other statistic that's not in here, I'm not sure if you follow SE3, the structural engineering organization. The SE3 is Structural Engineering, Equity, and Engagement. They put out the largest survey of structural engineers in the country. One of the data points that we found the most interesting in last year's survey from SE3 was about the children and dependents statistics. Last year, a survey of over 5,000 structural engineers, only 4% of the respondents answered that their employer is supportive of employees with dependents. 4% of 5,000 people in the largest survey of structural engineers in the country. We have a long way to go in our space. And that's a shocking number to hear about. That is such a small number of people that feel like their employer is supportive of people with dependents. And I want to just point out, there's a bias to thinking about this as a maternal issue. There's no gender indicated in the respondent there. Those are humans with dependents to look for. And again, it goes back to the culture of parenting being a possible change maker in our industry. Looking back at that workplace of the future data, we looked at productivity pre and post pandemic and just how people are feeling. 77% of people said they were about the same in terms of productivity pre and post pandemic. 22% felt more productive. I don't know if any of you are at that mid-career level where having to work from home where no one can interrupt you, you can actually get stuff done, may have helped you feel a little bit more productive. And that's certainly not to say at no cost to culture or career advancement or all of the other things that matter. But all we asked about was productivity in that specific statistic. And I can tell you having fewer interruptions is not always the worst thing that can happen to someone, right? Individuals working remote were more likely to feel increasing creativity and motivation, though, than those working in the office. I think that just the way that we have interacted with our work and the potential that flexible work, has brought to us is something that it'd be a mistake not to remember. Again, especially as we see the data on huge demand for the work, huge hiring needs, and real challenges finding people to fulfill the work that's out there. There's some serious data that is worth paying attention to if we're trying to figure out what all of the possible options are. To have a workforce that just a whole team of rock stars. One solution to this and to the different ways of engaging with your work and with your career professionally comes from a cohort team called Work Life Fit. And what they did is create a tool that allows an employer and an employee to talk about how they want their work to interact with their life. It has tools for both sides, including, it helps them think about the possibilities, empower themselves with data, facts and figures and case studies about changing the way that they work. Maybe the way that their company expects them to work isn't working for them, but they really like the culture, the work that they're doing, and they want to find a way through it. It has some templates and boilerplate to build a proposal, and then a pitch that can be made to leadership about why having a flexible or just a non-traditional pathway for people can be an option. And I would be remiss if I isolated this to like parenting as an issue. The burnout statistics are across the board. There are people at all different parts in their career. We're working hard as an industry. Utilization is way up, backlog is still up. There is a lot of work to be done, and it's really tough to remember to take care of yourself. And I think the other thing that I would point out with data like this is there's a bias in a lot of the research that's presented, and frankly, that I have myself. That's a tough one for me to ignore, that a lot of people aren't looking to like fast track it to the C-suite. That's not everybody's goal. And it's a little bit, I think, a mistake to assume that everybody wants to get to the top as quickly as they possibly can. Having a career that is inspiring and engaging and that works at different stages of the human, the life cycle that we all have with our professions. And when we want to spend more time, work-life fit, what can I say? The way that we all want to interact differently at different phases of our lives, and we're feeling different levels of motivation and engagement with our work, and providing resources to help get there. Priorities are fluid, and again, my goal is to make sure that anybody who has the brilliance and the wherewithal and the desire to be part of AEC has every possible ability to stay within this profession, and every possible tool as an employer to help keep them there. And that we're not overlooking any of the ways to make that happen. So I wanted to leave tons of time for questions. But if you're interested in the program, in Elevate Her, there's a Facebook group. It's just a community you can join. It's just called Elevate Her. There's the website. All of this stuff is free. This is not what I do. This is something that we created because it's important and because it solves a huge challenge, or at least provides a different perspective to think about what can our companies be and how can our industry flourish. So thank you for having me and listening to my depressing data and various propaganda.
Thank you so much, Jamie. That was really interesting and insightful. And I personally really appreciate all the data points that you showed to sort of back up what you're talking about. So thank you. We have about 20 minutes left for questions. So feel free to raise your hand, use the reaction button and raise your hand, or you can type a question into the chat and I can read it to Jamie as well. Okay, we have a question from Angela. You provided so much data that's helpful. How can Miyamoto International leverage this data and partner with you to address these issues?
Well, we don't really, well, I'm not really sure that I think for me, it's and what we tell our cohorts every year, because every year that, we get a new, group of people together, and they start out with we're going to change the world. We're going to do it all. It's all going to happen. And the challenge for us as the advisors to the cohort is saying, what is one specific thing that you can do that would improve things for one person, within your company that would have been the difference maker? What's one actual, tangible action that can be taken that you see as an opportunity to improve, and figuring out how to do that. There's so many ideas out there and so many things that would be game changing, but I think really return on energy is important. This is work that takes a lot of, for a lot of people, a lot of emotional energy too, to figure out how to tackle something, to get kind of the gumption to present it, and then to implement it and roll it out, and kind of figure out how in real time to make a change and to be a change agent. And I'll just point out that it's not billable time, but it's important time. And it's important that it's sustainable for the folks that are willing to do these things. And I'm not saying it wouldn't be, or there's any negative perception there, but I would just encourage anybody who wants to try to implement something within their organization to really focus on one specific action, and figuring out a way to move something forward. And I'm not sure if that's exactly what the question is asking, but one step at a time to change in the world. The question here is the program mentor developed by Elevate Her or by other organization? Yeah, that was a focus of one of the cohorts last year, actually. So it's part of the Elevate Her kind of umbrella of programs. All of the ideas that were presented are action implementation ready solutions from prior Elevate Her cohorts, and that's one of them as well.
Thanks. Jamie, I had a quick question, which is I'm wondering about the response that you've had to some of this work. I'm sure there are some people who are naysayers, but I'm sure there's lots of positive responses as well, and people who are interested across the board. So I'm just wondering if you could talk a little bit about how the response to this effort has been.
Oh, Lord. Yeah, there are definitely certain people that don't get it and that are kind of defensive about, why. My favorite one is, why isn't there Elevate Him? Well, y'all are doing fine. Don't worry. There is a natural kind of something that bristles about something that feels exclusive or exclusionary why are we taking care of this one group that instead of, you know, all of these other things we could be taking care of? And I guess what I would say is that we've tried to focus on the people that get it and that are looking for things they can do to move the needle. I mean, this is about recruiting and retention, and it's about taking action, and it's about real, tangible, specific things. This isn't about, you know, who's right and wrong and whatever. It's about figuring out how to solve like a serious recruiting and retention crisis in our industry, the things people can do if they want to. So rather than focusing on the, you know, the people that aren't going to get it, leaning into like all of the other people that are excited to do something that makes changes in their organization. So that's, yeah.
Absolutely. We have another question from Marina, which is, does the data include how different generations may view work life? For example, some generations may believe you have to be in the office to be productive and another generation may not.
Yes, the data it's really interesting. So yeah, huge generational divides within that specific topic. And what we see is that people in the 55 years of age and older are really strongly committed to getting people back in the office, just really, and their demographic cohort responded that they are the same or more productive and creative than they were pre-pandemic. They also are by far, you know, the most compelled to want people back in the office. And just to couple that with the fact that about 80% of ownership within AEC as an industry is held by people that are about 55 years of age or older, means that the folks that are making decisions, creating policies and influencing changes in their organization all skew really heavily towards like not being negatively impacted much by the pandemic and not really kind of getting, you know, the desire for the flexibility within the workforce. And again, it just, to me, it goes back to the having seats at the table allocated to people with different experiences. Because can you imagine not hearing all of the other kind of thoughts that are out there and all of the other ways that people are experiencing work? It's such a blind spot, you know, as a manager, to just not be aware of all of the other ways that people are feeling. So that, yes, there is definitely a generational skew to that data. And the other thing that's interesting is that people that are right out of school also really want to get back into the office. They see the value and kind of the camaraderie and, you know, learning how to be a professional, which, you know, I don't know if I had a thought in how that would go, but it's interesting. It's like each of the ends of the career spectrum.
Absolutely. Thank you. Another question is that a lot of the strategies you talked about focus sort of on what firms can do internally among their own staff. And I'm wondering if you have any thoughts of what can be done externally for influencing partners, clients, vendors, even some government agencies about why these topics are important for them as well. I know in our international team, we work a lot with government engineers, but our clients ask us to make sure there's, you know, diverse representation in the meetings, yet it tends to be typically male engineers who show up to the meetings. And sometimes our hands are tied of who shows up, right? So we struggle with trying to influence external partners and convince them about why we think this diversity is important.
Well, I'm not sure if this is exactly what you're asking, but one of the most interesting trends that we're watching, and especially in my work in mergers and acquisitions primarily, is the influx of private equity and it's called the great recapitalization is what we're experiencing now. About a third of the transactions, buyers and sellers within AEC, have some form of financial investment backed component. And the reason that that's so interesting isn't because it necessarily changes the demographics. However, they have funding requirements, they have ESG goals, and they have diversity mandates within their funds that they operate within. And they're probably one of the biggest like pockets within our space now. So wherever it's going to come from, we're going to start feeling pressure in a different way to have teams, leaders, you know, across an organization, and also attestations that we're paying people equitably, and all, you know, all of the things that go along with that come from finance, whether they come from your firm or client pressure or like municipal. There's now another kind of source of need for real action towards diversity. So I'm not exactly sure if that's what you're asking, but it's a really interesting trend that I'm definitely watching of how that will play out to provide yet another source of like power saying this is important.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, thank you. Yes, that addresses what I was getting at. So thank you. We have another question here from Florencia Diaz. Says, what advice would you give to women in the AEC industry, based on your findings and experience? I guess maybe one or two top things that you think women can be doing right now.
I think that a lot of the advice and the ideas from the cohorts that kind of are, geared towards, what can male leaders do differently. I think that as you're coming up as a female, it's the same exact advice. I mean, mentoring is so important, and getting as many perspectives and people who have, experienced their careers really differently than you have, and getting the best value and partnership out of those individuals in your organization will only give you another like emotional intelligence, like fluency that you can use. And I don't think that it is, these are all options that are out there, but I do not in any way mean to discount the power of being mentored by somebody whose experience is nothing like yours, and learning what you can from somebody who's had such a different background and career upbringing, and who's managed to navigate, with who they are and in their skin and as they've grown. And I don't want to discount the power that any of these groups bring to the table. Just because we're highlighting or spotlighting like one specific demographic. So seeking out ways to, be where the conversations that you want to be part of are happening, offering to do things that are maybe outside of your comfort zone. If that gets you, exposure to a different group than you may, I guess, be part of otherwise, but really like speaking up and expressing interest and willingness, to do something maybe different than people may think that you're up for. I think just being part of it. And I think you'll find that the people in the space and the leaders that, at least for me personally, that I've met are just wonderful people who have a lot to offer and are really enthusiastic to give back and build their legacy as well. So regardless of what they look like.
Great, thank you. Another question here is about training and whether or not the idea of additional training specifically targeting different groups was something that came up in the data, I guess as something that maybe people are seeking or that would help positively influence the folks to either stay in the industry, enter the industry, or return.
Like training.
I think it's like if there are professional development opportunities that might help women either stay, remain, move up within the industry for those who are interested in entering or staying. And if that kind of came up in surveys as something that people are interested in.
Yeah, career development, by far, training, investment in training, career development was ranked #1 on our best term to work for data set as the benefit. I hope that this was interesting, and I hope that like bringing people together. I hope that like the fact there are gaps in data is not depressing or us versus them, or to me it genuinely represents opportunities to like engage differently than we have before. And work better together. So I hope that comes across, and you all felt that.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you. We have a lot of work to do, but it's so helpful to see the data to back up some of these ideas and to really see a path forward with some specific suggestions that I know at Miyamoto we could implement or at least get started on. Anybody else? Any last questions? Jamie, could you just repeat the name of the website and I'll type it in the chat here if anyone wants to find out more about Elevate Her?
Yeah, it's zgelevate.her.com.
zgelevate.her.com. Great. Put it in the chat for everybody.
Well, again, everything there is like free. There's no, incentive. Like it's just really good stuff that people in our industry have built. So
amazing. Excellent. Well, thank you so much to Jamie. Thank you everyone for joining. Apologies for that abrupt ending. And thanks for rejoining us for the last couple of minutes. Really appreciate it. So yeah, thanks everyone. Enjoy the rest of the afternoon.
Thank you.
Bye.